Welcome, everybody, to this week's episode. We really appreciate you joining us. This podcast really shows us how we can all learn, live, and thrive off of each other. By sharing our knowledge through our conversations, we will impart some knowledge whilst learning ourselves how to progress even further. Here is your host.
Hello, it's me, Terry D, and welcome to another Word Today, Series 3, Episode 14. And this episode's entitled Oven Ready. And yeah, it's a bit of a criticism of the last 6 months of the handling of the government and what led us to this mess. Now, I'm going to play you this week's past Prime Minister's questions. Only a little bit of it. If you want to check them out, go to our website, realtario.com, and you'll see Prime Minister's questions there. Okay, here we have... Actually, no, before Prime Minister's questions, what I will play you is what our Prime Minister said before Prime Minister's questions last week, when he was talking about the current violence that went on last weekend. Now, so here, over to Boris.
The death of George Floyd took place thousands of miles away, in another country, under another jurisdiction, and yet we simply cannot ignore the depth of emotion that has been triggered by that spectacle of a black man losing his life at the hands of the police. In this country and around the world, his dying words, "I can't breathe," have awakened an anger and a widespread and incontrovertible, undeniable feeling of injustice. A feeling that people from black and minority ethnic groups do face discrimination in education, in employment, in the application of the criminal law. And we who lead and who govern simply can't ignore those feelings because in too many cases, I'm afraid, they will be founded on a cold reality. Yes, I'm proud to lead the most ethnically diverse government in the history of this country, with 2 of the 4 great offices of state held by a man and a woman of Indian origin. And yes, I'm proud of the work I began to lead more than 10 years ago to recruit and promote more young black people in the police and other walks of life. This country has made huge strides. I remember the 1970s and the horror of the National Front. I truly believe that we are a much, much less racist society than we were. In many ways, we're far happier and better. But we must also frankly acknowledge that there is so much more to do in eradicating prejudice and creating opportunity. And the government I lead is committed to that effort. And so I say, yes, you're right. We're all right to say Black Lives Matter. And to all those who have chosen to protest peacefully and who have insisted on social distancing, I say, yes, of course, I hear you, I understand. But I must also say that we are in a time of national trial, when for months this whole country has come together to fight a deadly plague. After such sacrifice, we can't now let it get out of control. It's black and minority ethnic communities who've been at the forefront of the struggle against coronavirus, whether in healthcare or transport, social care, or any of the other essential services that have kept our country going. And it's BAME communities, tragically, that have paid a disproportionate price. So no, I will not support those who flout the rules on social distancing for the obvious reason that we risk a new infection at a critical time just as we've made huge progress. And no, I will not support or indulge those who break the law or attack the police or desecrate public monuments. We have a democracy in this country. If you want to change the urban landscape, you can stand for election or vote for someone who will. And so I must say clearly that those who attack public property or the police, who injure the police officers who are trying to keep us all safe, those people will face the full force of the law. Not just because of the hurt and damage they're causing, but because of the damage they're doing to the cause they claim to represent. They're hijacking a peaceful protest and undermining it in the eyes of many who might otherwise be sympathetic. And as a society, we can and must do better. This month, on the 22nd of June, we celebrate the arrival of the Empire Windrush in 1948. And we remember the contribution of the Afro-Caribbean workers in the NHS and across all public services who helped to rebuild this country after the war. And today, once again, we face a great task to relaunch this country after coronavirus. So let's work peacefully, lawfully, to defeat racism and discrimination wherever we find it. And let us continue to work together across all the communities of this country as we put Britain back.
Together again. Okay, my question here for the Prime Minister or any of his supporters is for someone to say that Black Lives Matter. Could someone please explain to me and to the world why he said in 2002 that we should have never given up our colonial empire in Africa because Uganda was the pearl of Africa. Anyway, there is more to that. We also have to play for what happened at Prime Minister's Questions. And this is Sir Keir Starmer asking the Prime Minister to take control and responsibility over his handling of the lockdown for schools. Very interesting.
We all want as many children back into school as soon as it's possible and as soon as it's safe. What that required for that to happen was a robust national plan, consensus among all key stakeholders, and strong leadership from the top. All three are missing. The current arrangements lie in tatters. Parents have lost confidence in the government's approach. Millions of children will miss 6 months' worth of schooling, and inequality will now go up. Several weeks ago, I suggested to the Prime Minister that we set up a national task force so everybody could put their shoulder to the wheel. It's not too late. Will the Prime Minister take me up on this?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, as I told the House before, I've been in contact with the Right Honourable Gentleman by a modern device called the telephone, in which we've tried to agree a way forward, which he's then seemed to deviate from later on. Last week he was telling the House that it was not yet safe for kids to go back to school. This week he's saying that not enough kids are going back to school. I really think he needs to make up his mind. And since he's so fond of these international comparisons, he should know that there are some countries in the EU, in Europe, where no primary school kids are going back to school. I think.
Have this out. The Prime Minister and I have never discussed our letter in any phone call. He knows it and I know it. The task force has never been the subject of a conversation between him and me one-to-one or in any other circumstance on the telephone. He knows it, so please drop that. Secondly, he mentions other countries. Plenty of other comparable countries are getting their children back to school. Wales is an example. Across Europe there are other examples. We're the outlier on this. It's no good the Prime Minister flailing around trying to blame others. A month ago today, he made the announcement about schools without consulting relevant parties, without warning about the dates, and without any scientific backing for his proposal. It's time he took responsibility for his own failures. This mess was completely avoidable. The consequences are stark. The Children's Commissioner has warned of a deepening education disadvantage gap. And she spoke yesterday, her words, the Children's Commissioner, an emerging picture which doesn't give confidence that there's a strategic plan. She called for the government to scale up their response. It must have occurred to the government that space would be a problem, that there would be a need for temporary accommodation and classrooms. They built the Nightingale hospitals. Why are they only starting on schools now?
So I'm not going to give you the response. If you want to find it, you want to check out Prime Minister's Questions. This is going back to everything that Boris Johnson and even Brexit is just being from the Conservative Party. And I'm going to put my iPad down because I've been reading stories about it, and I was just going to read you some stuff. But earlier I was thinking, wouldn't life just be easier to be on a boat right now? A nice boat, you know. You could just take responsibility for yourself rather than having to put up with these politicians making decisions and arguing like children. At the end of the day, the Prime Minister needs to come out to the parents and explain why, they were told like a week before the schools were opening that they were opening. If you look at Wales, the Welsh Government give them a month here before they're opening. It just seems to be that Boris Johnson just bumbles around. He talks about law and order. The same message I played for you at the beginning, right? Where he's calling out the people causing violence thugs. He's giving it again after 100 arrests in London yesterday for the same thing. You know, the man just bumbles away. Now, his first message, it didn't give you any unity whatsoever, and why would you? Boris Johnson loved the British Empire, even though Boris Johnson probably doesn't get the British Empire. He says he's proud about the fact that his grandfather was Muslim. Well, I'm kind of proud about the fact that my grandfather was a Catholic, was from Ireland, and you can trace his family back to Wales. But at least I know there is a Wales. Now, there's one problem here, right? Why have we got Boris Johnson as Prime Minister? Why did we have Theresa May? Why did we have the Brexit referendum that left us and fractured this country? Now I'm going to play you why. And this is why. If you know the words, join in.
Brexit instigator, see you later. Gonna hit the road. Gotta get that road. Something changed in the atmosphere when I split the nation, so I disappeared. I'm going to be blamed for this mess. Time flies by when I'm living nicked up and you're dying in austerity. There's a dead pig's gob that I'm dreaming of. If you need me, you know where I'll be. I'll be living off my trust fund underneath the hot sun, forgetting that I'm someone who held a referendum that divided a nation and broke the United Kingdom. Call me Dave, I'm a football fan, but is it Aston Villa or West Ham? I don't know. But now I'm chillaxing round the clock on holiday in peace with my trotters up. I can get used to this. Standing I had the front to call me a twat, but I got off scot-free. So I won't look back. Twat. Living on my trust fund underneath the hot sun, forgetting that I'm someone
I can't remember the word. But
who held a
you've got the
referendum
picture of what why we found ourselves in a mess over the last 3, 4, 5 years, and that messes me. David Cameron. It's because of David Cameron. 1 minute, putting the government on a particular side, even though it was the government that had to implement this and the decision of the referendum. Everything that has gone on in politics since 2015's election, since 2016, is down to David Cameron. He fucked up. And I'd like to thank you for tuning in with me today. And we'll play you a little bit more of our awesome song here on Real Terrier. And I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Yeah, twat, but I got off scot-free, so I won't look back. Twat. Living on my trust fund underneath the hot sun, forgetting that I'm someone